The story began with 4 college friends at the McKinley Speedway. Nick just went out to buy a few cups of soda. When he came back, he sat down and broke the bench. Nick looked down. This old building looked totally out of place next to the modern race cars. He asked his friends if this place was safe. Hunt told him not to worry. There were fences in front to block everything, but the constant vibration from the car engines had already loosened the screws on the nearby pillars. Just then, a piece of paper flew next to Nick. He picked it up and saw a list of dead race car drivers. A strong sense of unease filled Nick's heart. Meanwhile, something went wrong on the track. Some oil from the pit station spilled onto the raceway. A car trying to rush back onto the track slipped on the oil. It almost caused a crash, but that wasn't the worst part. Another car rushed out before the mechanic could remove the screwdriver. The screwdriver flew out and landed in the middle of the track. Then a butterfly effect began. A tire flew into the stands and killed a man's wife. The panicked crowd broke a bench. A car exploded. The flying debris sliced a couple in half. A woman tripped and got trampled by others. Then an engine flew over and crushed her. The man stayed by his wife's body, unwilling to leave. But when he realized he had to run, it was too late. People were crowding around one exit. A security guard kindly told them the other side was open too. But after repeated crashes from out-of-control cars, the old building couldn't hold up anymore. Large parts of it started collapsing. Luckily, all of this was just Nick's premonition. He was clutching his girlfriend Lori's thigh nervously. Everything in front of him was exactly like his vision. He said a cowboy with a cap would sit right there.
Pardon me. Cowboy.
Then he said a woman would put tampons in her kids' ears.
Hey, put these in your ears.
His friends were spooked. Then he saw the race car that was about to crash. Nick told them they had to leave now, or they would all die. In the chaos, Nick punched a man named Andy in the face. He also accidentally knocked Carter's beer to the ground. Carter told his wife to stay where she was and ran after Nick, ready to fight. But before Nick could explain everything, a terrible crash happened inside. People started running for their lives. Suddenly, Carter remembered his wife was still inside. He tried to go back, but security guard George stopped him. At that moment, a tire flew straight toward them and killed Andy's wife, Nadia. That crash left 52 people buried under the rubble. People gathered silently at the racetrack entrance to mourn the dead. Those who were saved by Nick's premonition came to thank him, but the world is like that. Some people are grateful, while others quickly forget. Carter believed his wife didn't make it out because security guard George stopped him. He blamed George for her death. Back home, Nick had another warning in his dream. He thought it was just a nightmare, but he didn't know that death had already started its list. Meanwhile, Carter drove a tow truck to George's house. He wanted to avenge his wife. When he saw the lights in George's house go out, Carter went to the truck bed and grabbed a cross and a shovel, but he accidentally hit the gear lever. The hook at the back dropped to the ground. He planned to bury the cross in George's yard and tie him to it to burn him alive. Just then, a cold wind blew through the truck. A dangling charm hit the radio switch. Loud music started blasting. Inside the truck, a chain reaction began. Carter tried to stop the truck but found the door wouldn't open at all. He screamed in rage where he stood, not noticing the tow hook under his feet. He was suddenly caught by the truck's chain, dragged down the street, and burned alive after a gas leak ignited. When Nick saw the news on TV, he finally realized it hadn't been just a dream. Every detail from the scene had already appeared in his mind the night before. At that moment, he saw another vision. It was clearly a sign, but he didn't know who would be next. Elsewhere, Samantha was getting her hair done. Her 2 kids were playing outside, throwing pebbles all over the yard. Samantha had no idea that death had set its sights on her. The hairdresser focused on styling her hair, not noticing that the hair straightener had clamped onto a hairspray can. Just then, Samantha's kids ran inside. They slipped and fell to the floor.
Oh my God, are you okay?
The scene scared Samantha badly. When she paid and walked out, a man happened to drive by on a lawnmower. A rock shot out from the machine and hit Samantha's right eye. She died instantly. After reading the newspaper article, Nick called his friends together. He told them about his premonitions. Death was following the original death order, killing people with a chain of accidents. But Nick couldn't remember who was next. Janet refused to accept the idea. She'd rather believe the first 2 deaths were just coincidences. Hunt said since they were all doomed anyway, he might as well enjoy the time he had left. Clearly, he didn't take it seriously, but terrifying visions kept coming to Nick's mind. To figure out who was next, he and his girlfriend Lori returned to the now-abandoned speedway. They tried hard to recall everything from the dream, but he could only remember the first few people. Just then, George showed up. He brought them to the surveillance room. With the footage from the day of the accident, Nick finally remembered the full death order. They realized the next one was Andy, the car mechanic. But when they found Andy, they realized the whole workplace was full of danger.
Look, I'm around dangerous equipment every day. If I was meant to die, it would have happened by now.
Suddenly, a car lift malfunctioned. A car dropped from above. Andy stepped back to dodge it, slamming Andy's body against the wire mesh. The metal fence sliced through his body like a cookie cutter, leaving him in pieces, covered in blood. Based on Nick's vision, Hunt and Janet were supposed to die next, but they were killed at the same time in the dream, so he couldn't tell who was in danger first. So they split up. Nick went to find Hunt, while Lori and George went after Janet. At the pool, Hunt was sprayed by a kid's water gun. He angrily threw it over the fence. The water gun landed in the wrong spot, accidentally activating the drainage system's maximum power mode. Right then, a golf ball flew by and knocked Hunt's lucky coin into the pool. He dove in immediately to find it. The intense suction trapped him tightly against the drain. He couldn't escape. Eventually, the powerful pressure in the pipe sucked out his internal organs. Meanwhile, Janet was getting her car washed. A standing antenna was torn off by the washing machine and hit the power box dead on. The whole self-service car wash system stopped working. Panicking, Janet stepped on the gas. She accidentally opened the sunroof. A pipe above burst, and water started flooding the car. Just as the car was about to be filled, Janet pushed her head through the sunroof opening. But then the car wash suddenly restarted, pushing her toward the spinning brushes up front. Danger was right in front of her. Luckily, George and Lori arrived just in time. They pushed Janet's car back and saved her life. They managed to save Janet, but Hunt died in the accident, so they weren't sure if Death's list had been stopped or if it just skipped Janet. If the list continued, George would be next. Years ago, he lost his wife and daughter in a drunk driving accident. Now, he was ready to join them. George accepted his fate calmly, but no matter what, he couldn't bring himself to end his life.
Took a bottle of painkillers. I just threw them up. Hooked a hose from the tailpipe, stuck it inside the car.
They opened a bottle of champagne, celebrating what they thought was the end of the nightmare. But while Nick was packing his things, that choking, terrifying feeling hit him again. Then the news reported that the cowboy from the Speedway crash, Jonathan, had survived. Nick realized something was wrong. He jumped in his car and sped to the hospital, calling George on the way. He told him the next one to die was probably Jonathan. At that moment, Jonathan was lying in the ICU. Right above his room was a nursing home. One of the staff forgot to turn off a faucet. Water overflowed and began leaking downstairs, dripping right onto Jonathan's face. The ceiling started to crack and looked ready to collapse. Jonathan desperately crawled toward the exit. When Nick and George arrived, the bathtub crashed straight through the ceiling, crushing Jonathan to death. It was clear, Death's list wasn't over yet. Next in line was George. He was hit by an ambulance and thrown into the air, dying instantly. Now it was Lori's turn. Lori, completely unaware, was watching a movie with Janet. She had no idea that danger was closing in. In the room next to the theater, some construction work was going on. A worker had left his welding goggles behind, and they focused sunlight onto a pile of sawdust. The fire crept along the paint trail and reached the barrels of flammable liquid. Just in time, Nick found them. He grabbed Lori and tried to pull her away immediately, but Janet refused to leave. The explosion hit just seconds later, killing Janet on the spot.
The way to the exit, move to the exit, remain calm.
Luckily, it was only Nick's vision. He knew he had no time to waste. He had to find Lori right away. When he reached the theater, the fire had already spread. Nick grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, but it wasn't enough to stop the flames. He tossed it aside. At that moment, a nail gun nearby misfired. The nails shot out, punctured the fuel barrel, and pinned Nick to the wall. Gasoline slowly flowed toward the flames. In a panic, Nick grabbed a long stick from the burning pile. Right before the fire reached the barrel, he hit the fire alarm. The sprinklers went off just in time. The flames were put out, and he finally managed to save Lori. 2 weeks later, Nick, Lori, and Janet were sitting in a cafe, thinking they had finally cheated death. Suddenly, a truck swerved to avoid a falling scaffold and crashed straight into the cafe.